I'm Ann Shaw. I'm an architectural historian, archaeologist, and Hoosier. I love exploring Indiana's history and lesser-known sites and stories. Join me as we explore old houses, museums, historic sites, and archaeology throughout the state. This is AnneArchy.
Hi, I am Ann Shaw, and we are here today in Crawfordsville, Indiana at the General Lew Wallace Study and Museum. This property was owned by General Lew Wallace, who was a Civil War general. He was an artist, he was an inventor, and a famous author. I am here with Director Larry Paarlberg, who has been here for 10 years directing this study. Larry, why don't you tell us a little bit about Lew Wallace himself?
He was an interesting, complicated man. Lew was the youngest major general in the Civil War, fought a number of battles. The most important to in his career were the Battle of Shiloh, where he felt he performed admirably. After the battle, there was a little bit of controversy that haunted Lew the rest of his life. And then he's also given credit for saving Washington, D.C. In the Battle of Monocacy, a battle which he lost, but he did save the city from being taken by the Confederate forces, so a very important battle for him. His claim to fame, and one of the reasons we are able to be in this building, is because he wrote Ben-Hur in the 1870s. And that book became the best-selling book of the 19th century. The only thing that outsold it in the 1800s was the Bible.
Wow.
So it was a stunning work. It went on to be a stage play, which ran for 21 years on Broadway. And there have been 9 film adaptations of it over the years. So a very important work of art. He built this building with the proceeds from Ben-Hur. In his day, the building cost about $33,000, which runs roughly about $1 million. And I don't know if you're picking up the clock in the background, but that is one of the items he made for the building. He had this clock commissioned by Tiffany Studios in New York.
Wow.
And the man was very detail-oriented, so he sent them wood to build the case to match the woodwork that he had designed for the room. The entire building was his creation. He was basically the architect and the designer for it. So it really speaks to who he was.
What were some of his influences for the architectural style?
Well, he traveled around the world. People know Lew as a Ben-Hur author and as a Civil War general. He also was the governor of the New Mexico Territory. He was out there when Billy the Kid was running around, and he signed Billy the Kid's death warrant. So they had a relationship. He knew Billy the Kid. He met him on at least one occasion. He also served as the ambassador to the Ottoman Empire. And in those travels around the world, he saw lots of different kinds of architecture. And so the story is that when he started to build this building in the mid-1890s, he put together some Greek stuff, some Romanesque features, some Byzantine features, and kind of melded it all into this unique creation of his. When we have young people and they don't quite understand what this is, we just say man cave, and then they understand that that's what he was creating, was a private retreat for himself.
And so he used this sort of as his own personal man cave.
Very much a private retreat, yeah.
So he would come in here and sit in one of these chairs and read or entertain.
It's not as much entertaining. This really was a private space, and everything except for the rugs and a couple of benches that we have for people to sit on is original to Wallace. It has passed through the generations and through the decades pretty much intact, and so it's a very accurate presentation of how he had it. His son Henry took photographs in the building of his father, and so we're able to put things basically where Lew had them in the 1890s up through his passing in 1905. In his day, there was a full kitchen, a wine cellar, the power plants that ran the building. It was fully self-contained. It was famous in the late 1890s for having 100 lights. And so it was a pretty modern building when he put it together.
Now, he didn't live here in this building.
No, this was just his study. His home was across the lawn. I tell folks that one of the smartest things Lew ever did was to marry rich. And so his wife, Susan Elston, this was part of the Elston family property.
So as we look around here in the study, most of these things are Lew's things.
Yes, with rare exception, everything in the building belonged to Lew. The library books are all of his. He read all of them. We found notes in virtually all of them. He was an inveterate note taker and would write comments in the margins. Very active reader, very engaged. We found books that he used in his research for Ben-Hur.
Wow.
So it's a neat collection.
And he was also a painter.
He was a painter. We have 4 of his paintings out here in the study on pretty much a permanent basis. The most famous one is called The Conspirators. In Lew's varied and eclectic career, he was also one of the judges on the Lincoln trial, the men that conspired to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. Lew was second in command of that trial. He was the only attorney of the judges. There were 9 judges total. And he left after that trial was concluded. He went on and was the lead judge for the Commander Wirtz trial. Both of them very controversial trials in the day and still are heavily studied. The Wirtz trial was interesting because the prosecution used the argument of crimes against humanity for the first time, and the next time it was used was in Nuremberg. So,
Wow.
Lew he was one of those people, I jokingly say he was like Forrest Gump. He just sort of showed up where something was going to happen in the 19th century, and he was there. And he took advantage of being in the right place at the right time. So he knew virtually all of the presidents from Buchanan to Teddy Roosevelt, close friends with many of them. Perhaps outside of his brother William, his best friend was Benjamin Harrison. So a very close relationship with the Harrison family.
So very much a Renaissance man.
He's either a Renaissance man or a boy with attention problems who grew up and channeled all of those diverse interests productively. But yes, he was a lifelong learner. He taught himself the violin as a child, and then late in life he got curious about how they actually work. So he began to carve them and make them, and if they didn't sound right, he'd take them apart and recarve it and put it back together. And that's how he processed information, how he learned.
Wow. We've touched a little bit about the architecture. What is the building constructed of, and how is it built?
It is built like a fortress. It is very solid. A lot of Carnegie steel in the building. Lew was the designer for the building. He was not necessarily an engineer, so it's way overbuilt in the basement. A lot of Carnegie steel. The floor is poured concrete. It's 7 inches of concrete on top of a steel ceiling. The exterior is brick, which was purchased in Akron, Ohio, and it's a very high-fired brick. It's called vitrified, if you want to get technical. It's almost like glass, and that's one of the reasons the building has held up so well.
And it has a really amazing red color.
Oh, it's a deep, deep red color. And on top of that is a copper roof, which we have restored a few years ago. So it's a very solid building between the steel, the cement, and the brick.
Yeah. No other building like it in the world.
There is not, and people even recognize that in the 1890s. There were New York architectural magazines that were documenting this building as it was being finished.
Wow.
So he was a celebrity, and whatever celebrities do, people are interested in. But there was also interest in how this building was coming together.
Part of the reason this property is so iconic is the huge brick wall that surrounds it.
Yeah, the brick wall is our best friend and our worst enemy.
Yeah.
It sort of keeps the public at bay. Their son Henry, Lew passed away in 1905, and his mother, Lew's wife, Susan, died in 1907. And the Wallace family had a tradition of letting the Crawfordsville community use the property. That didn't bother them at all for picnics and retreats and things. Henry came on at least 2 occasions that we're aware of, and there were thousands of people on the property. And when Henry found that many people on the property, he felt it was too much. And so he put up a wall in 1909 that covered most of the property.
Well, thank you very much, Larry,
Sure,
for
thank you
talking
for
with
coming.
me about the Lew Wallace Study and Museum. Can we tell people how they could come here and visit?
We are in downtown Crawfordsville, so however you get to Crawfordsville, if you're in Indianapolis, I-74 is a natural way over from Lafayette, or from the south, 231 is a way to get into town. If you want to find us electronically and use that as a way to get here by driving, do 201 Elston. That'll take you to our parking lot.
Okay, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining us in Crawfordsville at the General Lew Wallace Study and Museum. We will see you next time.